Hey guys, so I thought about it a little bit more after I posted my short video. I'm also going to show you how to make this, even though it's pretty self-explanatory on the back, but let's go through it. So it says, in a large skillet, combine rice and vermicelli mix with 2 tablespoons margarine or butter. I have butter already in the pan. And what they mean by the rice and vermicelli mix is simply the rice that's in the box. Okay? So what I am going to do is we're going to melt the butter in the pan a while. And you can use any wooden spoon. I just happen to prefer this type of wooden spoon. Now, it says about adding the rice mix in with the butter, but I like to get the butter nice and melted before I add the rice mix to it. Simply because so it doesn't burn when the rice hits the pan. Let's turn the heat down a little to 2. It should be good enough. Now that we got the butter nice and melted in there, we're going to add the chicken flavored rice mix. Give that a quick little stir. Now, this will burn extremely quick if you're not paying attention. I found out the hard way when it comes to that. Now, this other pan that you're seeing on the stove will be for the Brussels sprouts that I already cut up for our honey butter Brussels sprouts. And that is a recipe that is very easy to get together. Now it also calls for 2.5 cups water. But that I will not put in until the rice starts to brown a little, okay? Let's give this a quick little stir. Just keep in mind, the long grained rice in here is what will burn extremely quick if you're not careful. Okay? I've become quite good at doing that with rice. Now don't ask me to do that with anything else because I have yet to master it on anything else. And in this measuring cup, I have 2.5 cups. So as soon as this gets to a point where I can add that, it's gonna become uh, not a volcano, but excessive amount of steam. And it's actually almost to the point where I can. So let's see how it's getting nice and dark. And that's a good thing. So let's add the water. Which is why I have the exhaust fan going. Otherwise, you'd be hearing the alarms going off. Okay, now that I have this down to 2, let me bump it up a little so it starts to boil a little. And we're going to add the flavoring pack that goes in with it. Okay, so now that we have it to this point, it's going to be simmering. You want to bring this to a boil. And then once it comes to a boil, you're going to cover it with this lid up back there. Reduce the heat to low and simmer for 15 to 20 minutes or until rice is tender. So, until this gets up to a boil, let's bring the chicken out to take an eye on that. Let's get this out of here so I don't hit it. And this is what the chicken looks like. I'm going to put barbecue sauce on it. Homemade barbecue. Okay, now that I flipped it, I'm going to put the lid on because I was trying to get it so that it would thaw out a little. And before I even do that, I'm going to throw a little bit of water in there just so that it has some liquid to steam it a little. That should be plenty. Now let's put this back into the oven. Okay, now that this is boiling, we're going to turn it down to low. Put the lid on and let it simmer. Now let's prepare our Brussels sprouts. And before I do that, let me switch burners so we can do it on this one. And like I said, the Brussels sprouts, since there's going to be 60 half or 60 of these, I'm going to use the bigger pan for them because they'll fit nicer in this pan. Okay. Now that I've already halved the Brussels sprouts, like I said, to the pan, I'm going to add the half tablespoon olive oil. And since I don't have a half tablespoon, I'm going to use the 1 tablespoon, but simply only fill this half full. Just like that. Okay? In the pan it goes. And it also says about butter. So, like I said before, it's going to be 1.5 tablespoons. So your butter is going to be labeled how many tablespoons. So, knowing that it's supposed to be 1.5, it'll take me to there, which is going to be the correct amount of butter that we need. Okay. And in the pan it goes. Now we're going to turn this on to get the butter melted a while. Now I'm going to be using a different spoon for this. I could be using the same spoon for both the Brussels sprouts and the rice, but why? Doing it this way, I wind up doing dishes anyway. Okay, now that the butter's almost all the way melted, let me turn this down a little so it doesn't splash up at me. We just simply add the Brussels sprouts. Now, the way I do it, I add the Brussels sprouts cut side down, but that's just me. And when these guys are whole, they look like mini cabbages. You can find these at any of your grocery stores, your Walmart, your Renner's, any place that sells food. Now I'm just simply adding a little bit of salt because it doesn't say specify when to add the salt. And you stir it around. Now let's check on the rice. The rice is coming along pretty well. I wound up having to bump it up a little because it stopped simmering. Let's put the lid back on this. The chicken is looking good. Okay, now that I have the Brussels sprouts and the salt in, we're going to cook the Brussels sprouts for 5 minutes. And in that time, after that time, I'm going to add a little bit of honey. It calls for 1.5 tablespoons of honey. I wind up putting in like 2 tablespoons of honey because it's never sweet enough for me anyway. And everyone that has had these that I've made says that it winds up tasting really good and doesn't complain about that there's too much honey. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more oil so they don't start burning. Okay. We are simmering away with the rice. And like I said, the barbecue that I'm going to be using is actually going to be homemade barbecue. Okay. Now that it's been about 5 minutes, I'm going to add a little bit of this honey that my grandmother got from Canada. And I'm finding out that one of these is equivalent to a tablespoon, a dry measuring tablespoon, but it has to be like rounded. And normally the honey would be runny enough that I could easily drizzle it across and stir it around. However, this actually works the way it is now. Okay, this I'm going to turn on the back burner, turn it to the temp that the front one's on, move it to the back, lid it, and pull out our chicken. Okay, let me temp the chicken. And they're climbing over 170. So let me add a little bit of the barbecue sauce. Throw it back in the oven. Lid it again, and back into the oven it goes. Okay, so our rice is finished. I'm going to put the lid back on. This way it stays warm. Our Brussels sprouts are finished. So let's turn this off. Put the lid back on so it stays warm. Now I'm just going to finish this up. By flipping the chicken and putting more barbecue sauce on. Lid goes back on, and I just want to make sure that the chicken is fully done, even though it's reading over 170 degrees. Until next time.